All right. Welcome back, everyone. I am Rado. This is HackConf 2021 online. This is the Adventurer track. And we have come all the way to our last talk for today and for the conference. And all the way from Seattle, we have Dmitry Vinnik, who is an open source developer advocate at Facebook, where he focuses on projects in the mobile space. His goal is to help developers be more productive through open source, and he will be sharing with us today how to identify and overcome these self-imposed roadblocks to allow you to appreciate yourself and your voice. This is Dmitry Vinnik. Please spam in chat. Dmitry, take it away.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you. And let me start my timer. All righty. Yes, so as I was introduced, my name is Dmitry, and today I'll talk about stress-driven development. If you're here for performance testing or things of that sort, this might be your own session. So let's get started. First thing first, I always like to introduce myself, like just a couple of slides. I don't spend much time there. About me, as was mentioned, I'm an open source developer advocate, which means I'm focused on Facebook open source, where if you go to our website, opensource.fb.com, you can find our videos, podcast, and blog articles that we write about open source at Facebook. I also focus on mobile, meaning that React Native projects like Litho or Fresco or even Flipper is what I'm responsible for when it comes to advocacy. But more importantly, I'm passionate about open source, and that's why I give talks at conferences like this one. Because ultimately, it's contributing to the community one way or another. It's not just code, and giving a talk is, again, one of the ways you can contribute. Alrighty, so let's get back to the actual topic of today's presentation. What are our goals? I always like to establish goals. And by the way, my slides might look basic. It's because the real idea here, I'm going to cover many things during this presentation. I hope the reason why there's so much information that I'll present is I hope at least something resonates with every one of you, and you can grab maybe at least one or two things out of 4 or 5 different areas of stressful life that I'll cover. But more importantly, I'll share my slides after the fact. You can go to my Twitter, or I'll also share it with organizers, and you can grab them and use this as a reference to hopefully help you guide yourself. But again, back to our goals. The goals are, again, fairly basic. I always like to understand the problem, or in this case, understand what stress is, more or less. Practices of dealing with stress, and how we can get started, and more importantly, how do we move forward? How do we stick with those habits that will help us improve or deal with stress? I mean, it's all great. We always hope for January 1st, where we go to the gym and start eating right and being less stressed. But that January 1st never actually arrives, or arrives and a week later we stop doing what we plan to do. All righty. So when it comes to stress, the important thing, and it's always important to ask why would we even talk about it? Why would you attend this session today? It's always good to look externally, basically say there is a demand for discussion around stress. This is a fairly old example from 2004. I'm not sure how well it's been discussed in Europe, but Electronic Arts is the company behind, games like FIFA and many others. But basically, it's been fairly famous back then. This article in LiveJournal, where a spouse of one of the employees was basically explaining how the overtime and constant work of her spouse, made her stress, and their life basically was put in jeopardy. There are other examples, like in the more recent 2010, where the similar problem was encountered by other families of employees, not just wives, but more than that. And maybe one of the most recent ones I actually looked for. There are many more these days, but I think this tweet really describes what I'll be covering today. Is that this person worked at Telltale. You might have heard of games that they developed, but I think it really strikes a chord with me. Is that ultimately what Brandon was saying? Work is just work. Don't do it for the sake of family. Family meaning when companies call themselves families. It's really about you, your health, and your life. It's all business at the end of the day. So there are many more cases externally, but obviously we have to connect it to ourselves to be able to care about this topic. And looking internally, you might ask yourself about your colleagues, especially if you interact with them. Maybe even back before COVID, you had a chance to have one-on-ones in person and people would open up to you. Maybe what about your family, whether it's direct family or relatives? And what about you? Like in my example, and I'd like to basically build this small connection with all of you here. I'll basically in the fall 2015, at that time, I was working full time and I also was studying full time, which is also wasn't foreign language for me. It's not the easy gig to say the least. So regardless of my young age, at some point in the evening of fall 2015, I felt something was off. I'm genuinely healthy, but I felt like numbness in my left arm. Then it went away. Then I went numbness in my right left arm leg. I've never had that before. Then that went away. Then all of a sudden, and I started like, okay, that's kind of weird. Then I started feeling numbness in the entire left side of my body, all the way to like face. And I tried to call the ambulance because I was trying to figure out what it might have been. Maybe not the best thing, like stroke or something. And so, anyways, by the time they arrived, symptoms subsided. It wasn't as bad for me. And when I got to the emergency, we discovered that actually it was a massive panic attack caused by the fact that I overworked myself. Panic is not actually caused by the panic. For the most part, it's just stress that causes the panic attacks, meaning it can show yourself the same way as a stroke would. And if you don't stop, my doctor told me, you will actually get a real one and you will be bedridden. And I don't need to explain what's the consequences of having a stroke, especially regardless of the age. So anyways, it really was an unwanted experience. I wouldn't want to have the same feeling and the same experience that I had to call ambulance. But really, it was very beneficial for me because it kind of forced me to reevaluate and look back. As someone who's coming from even though I live in Canada and US at this point, I'm coming from kind of USSR background, and I have this go mentality, constantly work without thinking about myself. And I had to deal with that. And really, this was a push that I needed. It became a motivator. And people do need motivators. For some, it's fear. Fear of death is a great motivator. In that case, you can argue it was a fear of death. Finding purpose, purpose in life. For many people, it's having kids. In my case, especially even lately, a couple of years ago, I had, again, similar feeling of not working too much, but rather not feeling like I'm not doing enough. People would call it imposter syndrome, but I'm not going to dive into that. But basically, with having purpose, like having kids, really made sure that I do not focus on that as much. For some people, it's religion, having communities behind them, and again, whether you're religious or not, it's really all about having a community that helps you to deal with problems. And more, because again, more importantly, is to have people who can relate and help you out. So, by the way, basically, yeah, we find our motivator. We know how to move forward. We know how to change. And so, what do we do now? We need to first identify the problem. Again, whether it comes to imposter syndrome and actually dealing with the feeling of you not being good enough, you first need to identify where the problem is coming from. So that's where stress comes in. Stress is whether, again, it's dealing with feeling like you're not enough, or it's just feeling of doing too much. All of that, all the way comes to stress. But you can't say all stress is bad, because nature is smart. If stress wasn't beneficial for us, we wouldn't have it in our lives. And so the purpose of stress overall is that before it was a fight or flight response, or even now it's fight or flight response. Imagine you way back in the ancient times, you were running in the woods, in the jungle, trying to catch a prey, and then you encounter, I don't know, an alligator or a puma or jaguar, and you either have a response of fighting that animal, or you have to flee and run away. And dealing with in the way stress helped us is we could forego sleep, so basically not sleep for longer than a day, maybe 2 days or even more, while chasing our prey or running away from something. And we could also deal with hunger, because again, if you're not able to stop thinking about you being hungry, you're not going to be able to get food to stop being hungry or to bring back to your family. So again, nature was smart to keep it with us, and but ultimately it still affects us one way or another. So if stress makes sense, why do we feel so bad? Why do we question ourselves? Why do we question our work? Because there are different types of stress. There is a short-term stress, like for instance, if you go to sauna and you are, it's still considered to be acute or short-term stress, where basically, whether it's heat stress or if you go to the cold shower, it's also a type of stress, but it's short-term because you can stop it, and it's within like half an hour or 20 minutes or even 5 minutes. But the problem is long-term stress. You can, especially if you think of your days when you were school or even universities or wherever else, not sleeping one night preparing for exam like I did is fine. It's not gonna ultimately kill you. But if you are doing it constantly, if you have sleepless nights one after another, as a new father, I can attest to that, it ultimately will impact you greatly. So, but short-term stress actually makes sense and helps you to improve yourself, improve your body, improve your health, because your body requires it. If there are no stresses, your body just becomes like a marshmallow. So, but long-term stress actually can have detrimental effect, impact you negatively. So what's the conclusion here is that we need to incorporate short-term stress. It will help you whether you're dealing with questioning yourself or whether it comes with working too much or doing whatever else you might be doing. But we need to try to eliminate long-term stress as much as possible. Obviously, not everything can be eliminated, but in this case, we can. And hopefully, I'll give you some practices of how to deal with it. Obviously, it's easy to say, but it's complicated to do. And there is a good old trick for that. It's divide and conquer. Basically, have different sections of how we can deal with stress and approach it one by one. So, you can call it grounds for stress, where we can get stressful and ultimately start questioning ourselves. It's in sleep, it's in nutrition, basically not when it comes to food, what we eat. It's fitness, both physical and mental, and of course work. But I want to be positive here, and instead of saying what's our ground for stress, let's say it's an opportunity for improvement and grounds for anti-stress. So let's go one by one. Let's start with sleep. So when it comes to sleep, reasons to sleep are, if you're not sleeping enough, it's been proven that people actually end up a lot more depressed, which leads to illnesses, major ones, whether it's Alzheimer or, even the early memory loss, or not being able to concentrate. There is a saying that's common saying in lots of languages, sleep on it. Basically, if there is a problem you encounter in the evening, maybe not try to find a solution the same evening. Sleep on that problem. In the morning, you're going to have a fresher head, hopefully, and you can find a solution to a problem you've been dealing with a day before. So that's really what comes down to one of the reasons to sleep. Because it boosts your creativity, it's again been proven, and also improves your memory. Because one of the ways we process what happened during the day, it's during one of the phases of sleep. Whether it's, some people call it while you're dreaming, even if you're not dreaming, it's also fine. But there are different stages of sleep you might want to learn more about. And if you need more convincing why sleep is important, there is this great book by Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep. There's also audio version on Audible, which actually I listen to. It seems long, but maybe after a chapter or two, you realize that it's actually very interesting. Whoever you are, whether you're a business person or you're a developer, it doesn't matter. You'll find something that you can relate to. So it's all great. We know now why we need to sleep. I mean, if you need it convincing. But the question is, how do we sleep? And the path to healthy sleep is try to control your light and noise pollution, right? It is possible to sleep in a bright room, but it is not best for your body. It hasn't been designed for that. Our body has been designed that, we wake up as the sun rises and we go to sleep as the sun goes down. Obviously not in all places in the world, but in some, that's how it works. And the body being built for that. So you also should try to repeat that at your home. Controlled environment, it's been shown that sleeping in the colder room is much better than sleeping like in the sauna. Try to have 8 hours uninterrupted. Again, I'm a new father. I haven't slept 8 hours in a long time. but still have a constant wake time. Even if you're not able to sleep for those 8 hours, and you might go to bed later, try to still have that time on your schedule, on your alarm, where you always wake up, because it's all really about you building the schedule, your biological clock that connects to the schedule. And this is how I used to travel way before COVID. I would try to control my environment even in a plane. So I would have this eye mask, great one, nothing I can see. These like construction grade headphones, which is noise canceling, and also the great pillow. So nobody would bother me, and I would actually be able to sleep on a plane. And there's this great book by Nick Littlehales about sleeping. He's a sleep coach for a couple soccer teams, a fairly famous one in UK, and he knows what he's talking about. Alrighty. When it comes to nutrition, another big thing, there is obviously a saying you might have heard, you are what you eat. I actually don't know who the author is, but I found that this is the author, and I don't know I still have no idea who this person is. But anyways, about the nutrition in general, again, I'm not a nutritionist, but I can guess things, or at least from my experience, diets, they don't work. More often than not, diets is what people would call yo-yo diet. Like the toy yo-yo, right? It's like it goes back and forth. Basically, the way it works, you lose weight, and often people, after a while, they eat themselves back to the original weight and even more, actually. That's what people call yo-yo diet. Diets don't work. It's all about moderate eating, really, and experimenting, finding what works for you. Don't go all dogmatic on, let's say, I don't eat vegetables, I don't eat meat. You don't go to extremes. Find what works for you and adjust. Don't say this diet only requires that. Really figure out what works. But overall, try to minimize sugar. Sugar is really complicated to deal with, but it's hard to resist. And increase the number of greens. This is the extent of advices I can give. What at least I found working for me. But more importantly, find what works for you and know that diets don't work in the long run. But really, the key to food control, it's intermittent fasting. That's what it's been for me. It's people would call 16-8 model, where you, for example, you only eat in a window between noon and 8 p.m. and 1 and 9 p.m. And you basically don't eat the other time, which is actually not that hard because majority of that you would be sleeping. What it really leads to, you don't have that stuffed feeling. It's a we are supposed to feel supposed to feel hungry. It's not just constantly being fed. We have such access in many countries these days. We have such access to food that we can constantly have snacks. You don't need to. Really, the body is not designed for that. And there's actually been studies that intermittent fasting does lead to longevity, basically living longer. It's all something to do with mitochondrial health. But if you want to read more, there's actually, again, papers on that topic. And some podcasts like Ben Greenfield, Model Health Show, and Human Optimization Hours, they go into these nutritionist advices a lot better than I do, and they know a lot more. They are actually professionals. You might have heard these things before, and they all sound easy, but it's difficult in practice. So habits is what helps us to stick to those, whether it's, again, to stop questioning yourself, or whether it's to dealing with stress directly. And habits is what drives our daily routine. And it's the same rule for all habits, all sorts of habits, because they all go by the same thing called habits loop. Basically, how it works is you have a cue or a trigger for a habit, you have a routine or action, and you have a reward that you're expecting. For example, let me quickly check the time. Good. For example, and it goes back and forth, continues to loop. When I read the book about this topic, basically, there's been way back, there's been a psychologist who had a patient. That lady, she basically was biting her nails to, not to say to the bone, but to a pretty painful point, right, when it's bleeding. And it was detrimental to her life at that point, because not just by the looks, but it really actually hazard, especially back then when, you break your leg and that's all. But anyways, she went to a psychologist, and they identified a cue or a trigger. She felt pressure in her nails. Routine, she was biting them, and reward was the initial pressure went away. So the way they approached it is they replace the routine. You can't change the cue. You will have those callings. You can't change the reward that you want to stop that pressure. But you can change the routine. You can control that. And so what they done is, as soon as she felt pressure, she would actually sit on her nails, on her arms, and that way she relieved the pressure. But she stopped, changed the routine from biting to just sitting on her arms. And that actually leads us to the point that you do not, trying to fight with yourselves doesn't work. You have to figure out what activities you should change, but still use your internal callings, your habits to your benefit. So again, don't try to fight with your nature. So if you're ready for a change, seems to be a lot of things that I covered, but the important thing is this thing called keystone habit, and I'll be mentioning it later today as well. If you stick to it, it has ripple effect. It changes your behavior. Basically, it's the idea of small wins that basically set up the entire day for you. They set the mood. As I said, they give that ripple effect. If you drop, what ripple effect means, it's that, let's say you have a stone, you drop it in the water, I don't know, in a lake, and you see those ripples coming out of it. The same comes for keystone habit. If you do it in the morning, let's say, it changes how your overall attitude is for the day. For instance, let's say you went for a jog in the morning, or you exercised just a little bit in the morning, or you woke up on time, or you made your bed. It's as basic as that. You listened to the music you wanted to, you planned for. Sticking to the things you planned, especially if you planned them ahead of time, the smallest thing ever possible, set your mood for the day. And that's what really sets your day. So that's what keystone habits are. They're extremely important. And if you want to read more, again, I can't recommend this book enough, by Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit. And there's also, again, audio version as well about it. So let's look at fitness, not any less important. And as I said, there is a physical and mental fitness that we'll talk about. And it's, again, especially important for folks with impostor syndrome as well, especially the mental part. So when it comes to physical fitness, again, it's important, the idea of keystone habit, because a lot of it really comes down to physical fitness. I really like that attitude of treating your body as like a car, and you have an engine in the car, and you have to maintain that engine. If you don't, really your car becomes to deteriorate. So that's why lots of keystone habits, like I mentioned, jogging or exercising in the morning, the smallest things is what would be called keystone habit. Try to have a variation in your fitness, have some integration, and I'll talk about it in a moment, and add flexibility to your fitness. So when it comes to, again, fitness is a habit, identify your triggers, what basically helps you to set your day right when it comes to fitness. Establish the reward. The rewards, when it comes to fitness, you have to be careful. You don't want to go for, and it's actually a common problem. People would go to a gym for half an hour and they feel like they can eat the entire bakery. I'm guilty of that, but so it's not actually good for you. So really think of that reward, especially ahead of time. Maybe replace food as a reward with something else, right? I don't know. You can buy yourself a book, or you can play a game for half an hour. I don't know. Do something. Really think of your reward ahead of time before you actually get hungry after the exercising. Establish the goals, what you're trying to achieve. Maybe you're trying to prepare for a marathon. Maybe you are trying to lose some weight, maybe gain some muscle. Have that goal in mind. And find community. It's always best to work out with somebody, and it helps you to gamify or add some points, basically, right? Like in a game, right? You get those achievements. Similar way with exercising. Some of the ways I do it, I use Strava. Strava really helps me to track my progress, and I also see others who are running along with me or in the space where I'm running. It's not just running, it's jogging, cycling, whatever you do. And again, it also shows you that you're not alone, and you're working towards your goal. There's also My Zone Tracker, wearables, different apps. But Strava for me is what I'm using the most. I have some variations in your exercising, your fitness. Again, as I said, acute stress like sauna or steam room is very helpful. Have different cardio. Don't just run every day. It's actually bad on your joints. Again, don't be extreme on anything, but even fitness. It's very famous that, let's say, crossfitters, they can hurt themselves if they go way too hard. So vary what you're doing, especially with cardio. Maybe run one day, maybe do jumping jacks, maybe go for a bike ride. So vary that. Change the focus. Don't do everything the same day. Change, like, do arms one day, do legs another day. Have that in mind so your body doesn't really. It has time to recover. And also, yoga is extremely beneficial as well. I find yoga very helpful, especially for dealing with stress. And it comes to integrations, really, before, when we used to have commute before COVID, I used to bike to work, was amazing, or run to work, or run at work. It's not a thing anymore for many people. Maybe it will be in the future again. Mark it in your calendar. If you have a busy day and you say, I don't have time for it, put it in your schedule. I can bet that the half an hour meeting for going to the gym, or an hour, would be much more beneficial than an hour spent discussing, I don't know, how to move a navigation menu by 2 pixels. So have the different desk types. Standing desk is not the best thing unless you actually use it, but you also don't want to have just standing desk. Make sure you have you sit every once in a while. So interchange that, right? Sometimes sit, sometimes stand. None of the idea is that it's bad for you to hold the same position for long. So have that changing for yourself, and also have boredom plan. When you're bored, and we are getting bored, we get to eat some unhealthy snacks, do some, watch YouTube. Have something that you actually do or planned for your boredom. Rather than eating something unhealthy, have maybe carrots, or rather than watching YouTube, some random videos, watch it for, I don't know, maybe related to your field or something that you're excited about, some hobby. And really, if there's a flexibility in fitness, again, setting up your morning routine sets your day. It's helpful when I used to travel. I would always have myself to exercise, so I can go for a run in any country, in any city I would go to. Bodyweight exercises, right? Pull-ups is basically a lifesaver. And really, if you go to sightsee a new place, especially when you travel, you can, rather than taking a car, maybe go for a walk. It's active sightseeing is a thing. All right, physical fitness, I mean, it's nothing new really to folks here. Mental fitness is an important one, or people would call it mindfulness sometimes. This is an overloaded word and has lots of meanings these days. But more importantly is that it really helps you to clear your mind. And that's, again, especially important to get those thoughts of you being an imposter or being stressed all the time out of your head, or at least realize what those thoughts are. Being able to control your emotions is extremely important. Embracing solitude, or basically being alone with yourself, and also meditation is extremely important for your mental fitness. So when it comes to clearing the mind, we have information overload these days. I don't have to explain why. I mean, even this session, it's an hour long. Who has enough attention span to listen to 1 hour, or at least comprehend that and take everything in? It's too much information. There's constant information dump on you, whether you go to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, whatever else. Really, there's too much information. You have to find what you trust, the source of truth. Try to have it, from different perspectives, so you don't just have a one view of the world, but really have the things that you trust and that you consume, but still limit that as well. You don't want to be overwhelmed. The world can look like a dangerous and scary place, but the reality is it's just we have more access to information. It's a lot better than it used to be. And really have a single focus. Don't try to multitask. Multitasking doesn't work. It's been proven. So have a single focus and keep your mind straight. And there's this great book on actually helping people to keep themselves to this idea of being focused and really don't worry about things. Just focus on what they do. Controlling your emotions. I really like this screenshot that I took of Jeremy Ashkenaz. He's very famous in the open source space. He's one of the creators of projects like CoffeeScript. But anyway, it's not about important. He posted this picture of him enjoying the sun, jumping into the water, and someone very nice left this great comment, which is very unrelated to the picture. But I was just I was just shocked by not shocked anymore, but really, this is the comment that someone would leave. And again, if I was Jeremy or whoever, you would question yourself, right? I mean, you've done such an amazing work, but there's still going to be some people who hate on you, regardless of what you do. And it really shows you that no one is immune to that. So always try to focus on positive side. There's never reason to be rude, really. I mean, even if someone like wrongs you, screaming at someone who's screaming at you, not going to resolve it. There's art of unsent letters. If you're upset with somebody, don't try to write them email like angry and send it right away. Write a couple of iterations. Hopefully by the fifth one, you get a lot calmer and you can explain yourself a lot better. Don't just focus on improvements all the time. When the project ends, don't just end it with, all right, how do we do it better next time? Instead, actually talk about what went well. Spend some time there before you say, how do we improve it for the next time? And also be proactive in your feedback. Don't just give a feedback when something is negative, like we all do. Sorry. Rather, just let me make sure the mic is correct. I want to make sure you can hear me well. I trust that you can hear me well. Anyways, sorry. Give a proactive feedback that that person did a great job, that you appreciate them. Do that. And there is a great talk, or actually, in this case, article by Brad Cannon from Microsoft on kindness in engineering, and he even did a podcast at Changelog. When it comes to embracing solitude, the art of solitude, keep having those quiet moments with yourself where you have nothing else, no one else. It's really important. The flow therapy was a lifesaver for me. It's basically when you are in that, sensory deprivation tank filled with like salt water. You floating on the water. You have nothing to see. You can't hear anything, and like for an hour or so. Some people panic, and it actually should tell you something. If you do panic, to be basically being alone there, unless it's a phobia. Really, it actually forces you to think maybe you should be, try to approach that silence slowly. It helps you to learn about yourself and actually see what you're great at and appreciate yourself. The problem with imposter syndrome in general, or being stressed all the time, is that you question yourself. You don't see how your uniqueness can be used in the world. But there's only one of you. Even if you're twins actually are different. So everyone is different, and it will help you to learn about yourself, the solitude, and really helps you to have clear judgments. So, alrighty. So the mindfulness. The last thing I want to talk about, the meditation. Meditation is obviously been talked about in many different places. There's unguided meditation, guided, active. Doesn't matter what kind of meditation you do. Even you might not even realize that you're meditating. Actually, it was a big discovery for me. For instance, if you go for a run, especially for half an hour, 20 minutes run by yourself, let's say, and you just breathe in, listen to the music, you are meditating. You are being alone with your thoughts, even if you're listening to something, maybe even enjoying the nature, you're going for a hike. That's a type of meditation, just active meditation. Or, I don't know, again, that's something that I recently had a very interesting perspective on. Smoking. I myself don't smoke, but I've seen like some drug specialist was explaining that one of the reasons why it's hard for people to stop smoking is the cigarettes. I mean, is that every time there is a problem, people would go out and they would smoke. And smoking is not just one addiction; it's multiple addictions. And one of those addictions, there's obviously physical addiction. There is a chemical addiction to the nicotine itself. But the important thing here is that if you think about it, when you go out, let's say you're going out to smoke for, 15 minutes or something, you're actually meditating. You are breathing. You're breathing in and out. This is what meditation is. You're breathing. The same when you jog. You breathe in and out. And the same way people actually, they breathe in the smoke and in and out. Anyways, and one of the reasons why it's hard for people to drop this habit is you're basically asking to drop the meditation as well, how they were dealing with stress. I'm not obviously inviting people to smoke because I am, again, myself, I'm not smoking. But in general, if you think about it, you might be already doing it, or people who do it. They just do it in the different manner. And again, if you need help with getting started, meditate, not to smoke. There is this great app called Headspace. It really guides you through relaxed meditation or even calm. Some of these are free, some of them are paid. You can find YouTube as well, videos on meditation too. And if you're skeptical of meditation, you think it's way too maybe religious to some extent. There's a great book by Dan Harris where he talked about his problem with imposter syndrome, with stress. He had actually a panic attack on live television at some point, and by no means, meditation was a religious outing for him. No, he actually found it very useful for him and stopped dealing with those problems I mentioned. And the last thing, but not any less important, is work. So main sources of work stress, it's the office environment, it's communication, distractions, and project planning. So when it comes to office, especially during the time when we used to have an office outside of our homes, and some people now already do, they go back to the office. The idea of open office, I never appreciated that really. It's the openness really doesn't let you to focus enough and forces you to multitask. The office perks often offers bribes. It's bribes for your time, right? I've read about some countries where there would be like a perk if you stay past 7 p.m. you will get a dinner. So on them, but at the same time, if you think about it, you actually. If you can afford the time, but still you're overworking, it's really a bribe for your time because time is what is invaluable. It's not the work that you do, really. It's your time. I often used to do the best of my work on a plane where I had no Wi-Fi, no distractions. And work is just work at the end of the day. Your family and yourself is what's important. And you shouldn't be spending, it's hard to say not you shouldn't be, but spending hours and hours questioning yourself, worrying that you're not doing enough work. Really, it all goes away after you figure out that work is just work. And there is this book about remote work by folks at Rework that they basically discussed how to work remotely effectively. It's been written before COVID, so we'll see how that. It definitely, I'm sure some people experience remote work already, so this book might not be a useful one anymore. When it comes to communication, I do not believe in synchronous communication. When people tell me, let's jump on a call, like these days or before, they would tap me on the shoulder and say, let's talk. I appreciate asynchronous communication. Send me a message first and see when I have time. Make a meeting with me or discuss that you're going to make a meeting with me. I almost feel like, it's too much. And it's not about the reach time. Some people actually mistake it for... if I send you a message on Slack or Discord, wherever, they expect you to reply within a second, like or a minute, on being up, basically being there, active, and reply. This is the wrong approach. The correct approach is the response time, meaning that not for folks to feel like they can reach you at any point. It's the idea that you're going to respond within a certain time. I'll respond to you within, I don't know, an hour, a day, maybe a week even, depending on what... who's pinning me, who's asking me a question. But really, it's not about them reaching you at any moment. It's about you responding them at some point. But set those expectations. Don't just assume that this is what you're going to do. Talk to folks about it. Talk to your team, to your manager, and whoever else. And they have names to faces. If you're working remotely, having just a faceless avatar might not be the best idea. Have a camera on every once in a while. Have maybe a photo of yourself. The reason why is because, again, it's been shown that we as humans feel more comfortable or more connected when we see a picture of a human there, rather than, I don't know, some egg or whatever else, some placeholder. And really dealing with distractions is another thing that forces us to question ourselves and being stressed. Mobile devices, noise control, setting boundaries, and getting into the zone. When it comes to distractions, let me go one by one. Mobile devices. Before I used to have a phone like this. Bunch of notifications, pinging me all the time. Now my phone looks like this. It's basically very well arranged in folders. I have no notifications ever. Everything is, I always have a do not disturb mode for the most part. Really, with mobile devices, you have to arrange your apps, especially the apps that you often open up. If you have a work phone, like I do, or you have work apps on your phone, your personal phone, I tend to open my email. I tend to open my work chat all the time. And the way to minimize that calling is to push those apps to the end of your screen, or to the few screens down, not on your home screen, but like a couple of screens forward. So you can still access them, but you can access them without thinking. That's why I really like on Apple this idea of minimizing the watch time, because it really forces you to stop, even for a second. That, are you sure you want to open it? It helps me to figure out that I should think about opening up email, especially on my own time. Disable notifications. Do you really need to know that someone poked you or liked your post? No, you don't. It's a dopamine rush. I know it's really funny and cool to feel that someone liked your post, or commented in your post, but really it's not important. Have do not disturb mode. Of course, for emergencies, you should have the people be able to reach you, but still, don't let folks to disturb you all the time and call you. And put your phone away. It's actually been shown, and it's quite interesting, that if you put your phone away at least arm length away from you, you're not going to grab it all the time, especially while you're working, right? On a keyboard, just put it away. You have your laptop in front of you or your machine. Why would you need your phone? Alrighty, noise control. When it comes to noise control, meaningless noise is actually a real thing. One of the reasons why people like to go to Starbucks is that that noise that's not connected to your work helps you immensely to concentrate. Have some sound support with like apps like Brain FM, Spotify, or My Noise. That white noise machine helps you concentrate and create that background noise. Lo-fi is all the rage these days, right? It's basically that music with no words, just some tunes. People really enjoy it. I know a guy who does like hard rock, which for me would be hard to concentrate, or like whatever the screaming rock called. He also does that, which is really interesting. But some people do what they do. Noise canceling, basically also control the noise that comes in. Earplugs, earmuffs, or noise canceling headphones if you'd like to go like expensive. You can also do that. In library rules, library rules is the real thing. If you go to library, you know that be quiet and don't disturb others. The same idea here. Keep quiet, especially if you're in an office, or even if you're at home office. Have those rules. Have people ping you first before they tap you on the shoulder. Establish the office hours if you're an expert in your field at your work. People might tend to ping you all the time, ask you questions. And the worst thing is that they do it at any point throughout the day or throughout the week. If you have those questions constantly to people asking you, have the office hours on your calendar, maybe every once a week, every once in a while during the months, and let people put their questions ahead of time, and then join the office hours. If there's no questions on the agenda, no need to hold a meeting. If there are questions, you're going to answer them. Maybe document them even. But really don't let people just ping you because you're an expert. By the way, when I say ping, I mean a message. And discuss those rules. Again, don't make assumptions. Assumptions don't work. Make sure you discuss these sorts of things. And the last thing I want to say is the project planning. Project planning is another thing where we have stressed and also question ourselves and our contribution. Low-hanging fruits, those things that we say, oh, it's an easy thing to pick up and deal with. Let's add dark mode to our website. It's easy. Everyone does it. It's not a real thing. The reason why it's low-hanging fruit is that no one done it, and because no one has done it, there might not be expertise in that space, or nobody knows how to estimate the time that you will spend on that project. So it's not actually easy. Dogfooding is a great way to understand the project, the program, the application that you're working with. Try to use it yourself and put yourselves in a customer's shoes. That way, you don't feel like your customer doesn't understand you. You don't question yourselves anymore. You become that customer. Parkinson's law, basically the idea that the work expands as you have more time allocated for it. If you have deadline constantly sleeping, you're going to do that one extra thing. No, you should have a hard deadline where you stop developing, you have a code freeze, and you deliver your project. And also, the Conway's law is another real thing. If you constantly feel like your project plan is sleeping, your project is disorganized, it all comes down from the company. It means the company is disorganized. The Conway's law basically dictates that the project and the application, whatever you're working with, corresponds to your hierarchy in the organization, to the state of your organization. It just matches that. So if you constantly see that the projects don't work, and it's not you, it's probably them, it's the company. So think about that. And this book again is also quite nice. Doesn't have to be crazy at work, where they talk about the things that you might encounter or do actually today yourself. And we've talked about a lot of things: sleep, nutrition, fitness, and work. Are there any gotchas there? Obviously, there are. The things that can cause you to fail: being dogmatic and doing everything by the book, whether it comes to diets or whether it comes to completely stop. I say tomorrow I stop questioning myself. It doesn't work that way. You have to do it slowly and what works for you. Jumping in too fast, it's a real thing that many people can try to run a marathon. They can, with no training whatsoever. They can try to finish it. But after that marathon, they will not, most likely, they will not go for another jog, for another run for like 6 months, a year, maybe ever. They might hurt themselves really badly, or even like mentally hurt themselves because it's quite an experience. So you can do it, maybe like say tomorrow again, I stop eating all the sugar, or I stop worrying. It doesn't work that way. Do it slowly, step by step. You should have goals. Why are you doing that? What's your motivator? And don't try to fight your nature. I showed you with a habits loop. It really comes down, you're working with yourself. Don't try to fight against it. And again, there's another awesome book that I liked, On Day on Your Life, where really Aubrey talked about all the things that I just mentioned. So lots of information, as I said up front. There's different things I mentioned and talk about. But who do we trust? Do you trust me? I wouldn't say so. I mean, I share my experience. I'm not a specialist in those things. I actually had a guy. I was on a way to a conference, I think in Poland or something, and I met another speaker who I told what my topic is, and he's like, "Are you a psychologist? Are you a PhD?" I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm just sharing my experience because you don't have to be a psychologist to experience stress, or don't have to be a PhD to experience stress. We all experience that. We all question ourselves." Like Tom Hanks famously says that he doesn't feel like he does enough, or Lady Gaga also had the same, share during one of her interviews where, where she mentioned that she doesn't feel like she's good enough, or people often describe this idea of they feel like someone's going to knock at their door and say that, okay, we are the imposter police. We know what you've been doing. We know that you've been lying, that you're actually not good enough. All the stress you felt is a real thing. So please leave. And, whether you are on the beginning of your career or you are a senior developer or whatever, the VP, it doesn't matter. Everyone asks the same question to themselves: am I good enough? Am I doing a good enough job? So it basically, everyone can feel that, everyone can relate. And that's why I feel like I have enough expertise to share my experience here. And so find a specialist, by the way. Whether it comes to nutrition or you identify a problem you have, figure out who you should talk to. Because I don't want you to go and exercise if you're not allowed to. Go to talk to your doctor. But experiment, figure out what works for you, and share your experiences. Use different apps. Go to, people like this. There's the new accountability groups these days, whether it's on Facebook or on Twitter, or there are even different apps where I think you put like money in, and basically, I don't remember the name. One of my buddies made that startup, but basically you put the money in, and if you do not complete the task that you wanted to, and you actually share your updates every day, like basically having stand-up with the folks in your community, and if you do not deliver on what you promised to deliver, you will lose the money. So that's actually an interesting way to keep the accountability. It doesn't have to be money, but it's one of the ways. And there is also, if you Google it, there is something called Coach as a Service. There is that service where you can pay somebody to call you, shout at you, and help you do things. You just Google it. I think it's called Coaching as a Service. You'll know what I'm talking about. So yeah, there's services like that too. So my call to action really is find a purpose, find what drives you, find why would you want to stop questioning yourself, why would you want to stop being stressed, because it all comes down to stress. Inspire and be inspired, right? There's like, there is the reason why if you go on YouTube and you have those affirmation, The Rock reels of him saying, I wake up at 4 a.m. and I exercise twice in the morning. And there is a reason why those videos get tens of millions of views in like a week. Because people are looking for that. They're looking for ways to be inspired. TED Talks is the real thing. So really, there's enough supply of ways to get inspired. But unless you figure out why you're doing that and you try to actually share your contribution to your health with others, whether it's publicly or with a family, it's not going to work. So don't just watch those videos, actually commit to do something. And that tomorrow that Monday, that January 1st will never come unless you do it right now. I find for myself, have to do it right now or the next day to the latest. Otherwise, I won't actually do anything. And really enjoy life. Really, whatever you believe in, at least we have one life, one way or another. At least the physical life, whatever you want to talk about it. But anyways, the more importantly, enjoy it. Work is just work. One day you won't be working. You don't have to be as like brutal as like my coaches back in the day. They would say that you will sleep enough when you're dead. That's kind of aggressive, but it's one way of looking at it. Ultimately, enjoy it. I know it's hard to say. Stop questioning yourself. Stop being stressed. You have to identify the problem. You have to find the way that works for you to deal with it. Maybe even go to, again, I mentioned going to professionals. Go to a therapist if you have that opportunity. In some countries, it's more expensive than in others. I myself, not a long time ago, I went through behavioral, what's called there is the special type of exercising where they go through a couple scenarios and they help you to see that you question yourself too much. Meaning, again, one of the ways people encounter imposter syndrome in particular, they have a few things they do. One of the things is catastrophizing. For example, they feel like, and again, I like the therapist I was working with. I like that they shared with me like special like cartoons where there were real scenarios, and there was even the developer at one of them. But one of them there was the mother, and she was basically preparing for her child's birthday, and she was panicking that things weren't working out. The actor who was supposed to come in the I don't know, Captain America suit wasn't coming. The cake wasn't ready. Things weren't coming together, and she was panicking. She was all over herself. She couldn't deal with it. She couldn't deal with the stress. She felt like she's a horrible mother. Again, she was questioning herself like an imposter would, even though she's an amazing mother. She's been there for a child. She loves her child. She's already amazing. So, but she has this idea of catastrophizing. She feels like it's the end of the world, and we all do that. Whether it's, let's say, with the project's not going to work out. That's it. That's the end of the world, and it's not. The way to approach it is you start thinking about what's the worst thing that can happen. Okay, let's just walk through the scenario. Let's say in her case, in that mother case, the actor doesn't come. Okay, maybe someone else, you can buy a costume really quickly in a nearby shop, and the father or a friend can wear it. And even if not, would the child wouldn't care about the fact that there is no actor, or at least he or she will understand. It's not the end of the world. It's just another day. Maybe the next day the actor will come. Really, we start mind reading. Mind reading is another thing that doesn't help us with imposter, meaning that you start thinking in what people think of you. For instance, there was that scenario that my therapist shared with me where a guy, an IT guy, he is at his performance review. I'm sure if your companies, you do performance reviews the same way, but basically this IT guy was sitting with his manager, and his manager was going through three main points. What the engineer did well, what didn't go so well, and what to focus on in the future. And this IT person did an amazing job, actually. But he wasn't he wasn't listening to his manager, he was overthinking it. Meaning, when the manager was covering the things that you did well, James, and this is when James started saying, okay, this is when where he says, I did something all right. He did an amazing job. He excelled, but he still felt that the manager was actually saying or thinking that you are failing there. The things that you should improve on. The people can't take criticism that he started overthinking. He started trying to read the mind of his manager, and while the manager was saying that these are the things you should improve in the future, he thought the manager, what actually the manager is saying is, again, you completely failing at these points. There is nothing to save you. And basically, this is what we always do. We overthink. That person didn't add the smiley face at the end of the message. They probably hate me. It's you trying to mind read. Honestly speaking, from my experience and from experience of many people don't think that. People are not sociopaths and thinking bad things about you. There are more nice people than not. So don't try to think too much about it. But again, therapists can really help pinpoint those things that you start questioning. Just by the talking to the professional, they will hear you doing these things like mind reading or catastrophizing. And that's where specialists can really come handy. And I know there is a stigma of going to specialists, especially in some countries. Don't have that. Really give it a try. Don't need to share with anybody. It's really for you, for your own good. So anyways, with that, I want to say thank you for listening. We'll go to Q&A. I want to leave more time for Q&A. But here's my Twitter, blog, LinkedIn, email. You can ask me any questions there too. So let's get to the Q&A.
All right, Dmitry, thank you very much. This was really, really insightful. Sadly, we won't have the time for all questions. So what we're going to do is to get you to Discord so you can follow up, answer all the questions after this. But I think I can still ask one or two questions if we try to keep the answers within a minute. Then we can cover some questions. Is that okay with you?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Let me take. Yeah.
Sure. So one of the questions is how to stop comparing yourself to other people, which is in the context of would you give some advice for how to stop judging people, or at least judging people in your head? Let's go with this one.
Okay, so there are two questions. How do you stop comparing yourself? You can't really. You can't stop comparing yourself to others, and the better you get into the I currently work for Facebook. I know people who work for Google. I work for other companies as well. You might think, oh my, I've achieved so much. I work for Facebook or Google. But you start questioning yourself even more because you're working with smart people. There are smart people at any types of companies. But you're going to ask yourself, am I good enough, regardless of what stage of life you're at and what stage of your career. So you can't really stop comparing yourself to those folks. The way to deal with it is understand that you're unique and you're good enough. And your uniqueness is what brings your unique expertise to the table. You might say, I'm not a React expert. I'm not an Angular expert. I'm not good enough because there is that creator of that new framework is working alongside with me. Great. You have things that your experience added to your portfolio that you can bring to the table. You can ask that question. You can make that contribution. So you're not going to stop comparing. Just learn to appreciate yourself. That's really the only way. Judge others. Judging never works. Never helps anybody. I mean, I like to do it every once in a while, but it's only if you care. But like, why would you care about judging them? You try to put yourself on their spot. Yeah, put yourself on their spot. That's usually actually a good way. And thinking how they got there. Maybe you don't know enough. There's actually a good example. Let's say someone cut you on the street while you're driving. You might say, oh, this person is awful. Like, how could they? But let's try to think it through. What if that person was rushing to a hospital with his pregnant wife, let's say? Would you feel compassion? Would you feel differently? So judging right away might not be the best thing here. We have time for another question? Sorry.
Sadly, this is all the time that we have. But again, to all the folks that asked questions that didn't get answered, we will get Dmitry to Discord and he will answer the questions there. And that's about it. That's about it for today. That's about it for Hackconf 2021. But we are not over yet. In 5 minutes, we're just going to move to the other room, gather everyone, and make some closing remarks. So stay tuned. Don't leave yet. There is going to be a 5 minutes counter, and we'll see you after this. And Dmitry, once again, thank you. It was great, and all the best.